different today. We're going to do some restorative bone therapy. And so we'll be using a chair and wall space. The difference is the chair for this class. So I want you to have a blanket at the back where your head's going to be at the mat, and it's going to be at just a single fold. And then you're going to sit, get all your props out. So you got blocks, belt, if you've got a therapy ball, and a sandbag. And I want you to have the bolster so the short end is between the feet of the chair, and then you're gonna raise your legs up. So this will be a weightless legs position. And you'll scoot your hips, think of it as kind of hip motion. If your feet push into the wall and they start to rise up the wall, what you want to do is slide your chair a little farther back, and maybe your bolster, okay? So you need to take a few moments to figure that one out. And your hip flexors will get kind of piping hot on this, trying to get this negotiated. But once you're on the short edge of the bolster, you're going to roll down the spine on this little narrow support. And then once you lower back, if you feel like, wow, my shoulders are not on the floor, perfect. I want you to have the shoulders so they're a little bit up, so the blades are kind of pinched in with the bolster. And if that doesn't work for you, you can always take that efforting to come back up, scoot your hips a little farther, closer to the chair, and then roll down. My tendency is to slide quite a bit back, and so you might have to pull your clothing so it all stays on and you're comfortable. And then once your legs are weightless, we're going to add the sand. The sand could be anywhere here in the mid-range. It could be on the hips, right? It may feel like it's going to kind of roll back, but with gravity, it will eventually settle. So don't worry about if the sand starts to feel gravitationally like it's going to slide back to your ribs. If that's not something you care for, you can always place the sand a little bit higher, right at the base of the sternum. So the xiphoid process right at the base where the ribs feel like they're intersecting, or turn the sand from the belly from the heart to the belly, okay? All right, this is one of my favorite kind of instant releasing pose for on so many levels. So as the arms spread out with the shoulders center back, they may feel like they're getting closer to the floor, but don't focus on the shoulders touching down on the ground. Bring the focus to the simplicity of the legs a little bit apart, even if they kind of flop out, so the feet kind of hook to the chair a little bit. You can kind of feel that connection. And when the spine has its natural curve, this pose accomplishes many things at once. When it gets your legs up, it opens the chest, reverses the stress of forward bending, and it places the head below your heart. So arriving to create a helpful array of circulation in our system before we stand in our legs, and require some commitment of endurance right through the practice. So resting your eyes, feeling the movement chamber of the ribs with your breath. If you need to remove the sand, that's fine, or if you don't like to use it, perfect. But just noticing that the hips are in a shape of kind of concentration here, of balancing and centering. Filter the air in through the nose. Relax on the out breath. Quite a bit of physiology focus here, right? With all the things, the legs up, the chest open, the head below. that the breathing might be a little challenged, right? When you're basically upside downish, right? So, right, prone breathing is easier if you're seated forward and leaning. So now you're challenging and, in some sense, stressing, right? Strengthening the breathing muscles. So there's resistance because of the shape. One of my legs like the break. Okay, let's kind of gently move motion into our lower extremities, right? Movement of them is considerate for the heart, right? Brings blood flow back to the heart. So getting them to have some movement is helpful upside down. So sand goes away and we just take cobbler's pose. So our feet on the edge of the chair, and we let the feet push a little bit together. In fact, you might play with this one. Sometimes I like the variation on this where you have one foot on the bolster, one foot on the chair. That's a little much for my hip joint, I think, so I'm back to feet together, knees out. May have been something I like to try before years ago, but this time it's best for me to have balance in my hips. But if you want a deeper hip stretch, you can always try one foot down, one foot up. But keep in mind, we got a ways to go, so take it easy. So when the feet are touching, even just mildly, they can't squeeze together easily here because there's so much volume in the inner leg. That's kind of what it is. It's like adductor volume, okay, of circulation. So now that your shoulders are probably sliding down a little bit more, it's happening. The shoulder drop is happening. It's helpful to keep that awareness that it just keeps opening your chest. It's not bad this direction. I'm not slumping forward whatsoever. So feeling that sensation in the inner leg, feeling there's some openness, then I want you to start to move the feet a little bit apart and then just let it happen that bottoms of the feet, or actually just the heels really, huh? Hopefully your chair is close to a wall. Now, if you had to move it away when your legs were on it, you are probably going to start to push it a little bit closer to the wall. So if you need to set your feet kind of on the lower leg of the chair to push it, make sure you're anchored with the chair at the wall so there's no accidents here that come up. So I lengthen my neck. I purposely just let my body slide a little bit back, and then I'm going to use the blanket, little bit of ledge that it is, to support me as well. I'm going to lift my hips, and I want you to turn your bolster horizontal and then just land back on it. You might land on it fast so then you can orient yourself to get the bolster high enough on your back. Of course, my bolster is not under my shoulder blades at all, but it's under the lumbar spine. And so my seat is kind of on the edge of that bolster, just like we do when we do legs up right in the middle of the room, same kind of thing, okay? So let's take a moment where we get a hold of a block or a therapy ball between the knees, so squeeze the knees in, and feel when the feet have a little bit of lift off of the chair, okay? Of course, you know there's always a chair to put your feet on if you need to take a break here. But squeeze the ball, feet off the chair, and release. If you've got a block, it's probably not quite the same, right, with the resistance. So if you have a block, you just hold the block. But alternate squeezing in and release. Arms spread out, squeezing, and then as you shift back into center, just holding onto the ball, let the knees shift from side to side. Feel that the hips are in that motion as well. They press into the bolster, just one at a time, right? A little resistance into the bottom hip. And then see if you can bring your knees closer towards your arm when you move them over to the side. So I shift the knees over and then up towards my arm. Try to keep my head centered. Inhale and exhale. That's going to be a challenge. So inhale, belly expand center, and exhale, squeezing the knees towards the arm. If that doesn't work for you, you can let the knees just shift side to side. But kind of play with it. So when I go back to center, but I'm not squeezing the ball. I'm letting my abdominals expand, and then as I move towards the side, then I squeeze the ball. Yeah, it's a little bit strange, right? What your breath is doing when you squeeze the ball, I think. Okay, so inhale, center, exhale, last one. Okay, now come back and center, and as you push the ball down to the side, you're going to cross the right ankle to the left knee and take a block and place it so it could be the lowest setting. You know, when you're already propped up this high with your hips, you probably don't need to point the block at your leg this far, you know, the highest setting. You probably can just push with the larger surface of the block. And you're going to do a little bit of palpation. So I push, so it starts at the border of the medial ligament here in that right knee. And I'm just trying to do a little bit of palpation with the block towards my heart, right? So pressing, 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 and pressing. And then once you press so the elbows are down on the ground, or they're kind of resting on your side, you can let the elbows press down, but you want to push with that block. And if you need to turn the block so it's in the second setting, that's great. So you want to push so that the right hip feels a little bit of stimulation, but not too much. You can slide your right foot higher up on the left thigh, but I'm a little cautious. I like to flex my right foot and just feel my shoulders try to rest back here, and stay with that pressure on the inner thigh. Maybe even close your eyes, few more breaths. Feel the belly comfortably move. Okay, now rest the block on your belly and then uncross the right leg. Take both legs straight up towards the sky, just straight up. You don't have to balance a block on them, on the feet. That would be funny. Okay, and just feeling the tailbone press a little bit into the bolster. Okay, bend the right knee, foot on the chair, and you know, caution, right? Notice when you drift the foot down, does it change the circulation in the knee? Does it feel like you have an adequate support with the foot on the chair? And then cross the left ankle to the right knee. And just start simple. Start with feeling the tailbone naturally arching through the lower back. And then taking that block to the left leg. Likely, it's going to feel like there's some similarities and some curious differences in the tone reaction, maybe when you palpate. One side just might feel a little bit more circulation, less tightness, but the inner thigh is not like a place where there's knots, right? Like the outer, the IT band, that area higher up feels like it's kind of tissues and knots. But the inner thigh, it just is generally, you know, tense because it's guarding, but there's a lot of lymph that you can focus on, circulation there, draining. So again, I'm going a little bit too far up. I'm trying to now bring the block to push and going back down towards my heart. And I'm just going to settle so that I'm going to turn my block because it feels easier for me to rest my shoulders this way. I'm just going to press just lightly. You know, some people push like their elbow into the block for this one. My shoulder feels a little tired to do this the whole time with the palms onto the short end. It's up to you. You might decide, nope, just going to put one elbow here and push. Okay, it's kind of curious here. So centering the abdominals, the hips aren't going to be exactly centered. Feel the tailbone press down, and then I want you to move that block besides you and take a belt, and we're going to find it first, and we'll keep the left leg going. So I want you to use this in the shoulder focus here today. So you're going to take your belt under your foot that's you're supporting right now, And from the knee, it's going to go up into the belt. And I suppose when you do this shoulder range, you don't really need your belt very big of a loop, but you want to connect your belt so it's in a loop. And you're going to slip the hands inside the belt. So between the thumb and the index, that webbing is going to be pressed into with your belt. Okay, right leg rests on the chair. Good for that, huh? Get enough belt. I thought I needed less, but maybe I need more. And placing it so that when you reach the arms back overhead, there's an interesting range in the shoulders. If you need the blanket under your head a little higher, this one would be okay for that. But as I reach back with that arm span, right? So my palms are together, my arms are working, hopefully in tandem, right? You can always kind of shift a little bit with your blades if you want for fun, but feeling that draw of circulation in the back muscles of the left leg, with the right leg relax on the chair. Yeah, this is a curious one. It seems so hamstring bound, I'm sure, but you might find that the striving of the arms pointing back, or if that's too much for your shoulders, you can have them a little higher up towards the ceiling. But just let that leg linger with that reach through the back muscles of the left leg. Focusing on the bladder meridian, right? The back line of the body. Okay, now when you feel the foot maybe flexing or trying to do something, I want you to respond here with support, right? So as I push into my left foot, I'm going to bring the right foot up into the belt, keep my hands as they are. See, this one works pretty good versus brain float because the arms can stay pretty comfortable versus the belt at your back of your head, huh? A little different. So when I slip the left foot out, I'm going to lower it down to the chair, and as I stretch the arms back, it's unlikely that you measured your distance on the first side exactly. So you got to kind of work very personally with the sensation thread through the back of the leg, right? I feel a little different sensation in my calf on the second side. It's my dominant leg. So as I get out and do my walking, it's challenging with a little slippery condition. So I might be more bound up here on this side of my calf. So feel when you're pulling with the arms, right? You've got to negotiate. Let's say I don't feel comfortable with my arms far back, have my hands a little bit farther straight up to the ceiling, right? It's a little different circulation for the hamstring, isn't it? And that's okay. It's great for if they're vertical. The leg is vertical for the lymph. So there's always something good about however upside down you're going to be, with the leg swinging a little bit or the leg elevated. The leg elevator. Levator leg. I don't think that's a part, but I like that. Levator leg. Okay, so as we motion, I feel it a little higher up in my hip on this side. It's a little hip bonus. Okay, so let's shift a little bit with the leg span. So we're going to move right into hip, glutes. So as you push forward with your leg in the belt, let's bring the knee into bending and slide the belt off the foot. And we're going to get rid of this bolster here. So you're going to push into both feet on the chair. You're going to lift up the hips and bridge, slide the bolster off to one side. And we're good with props. Okay, we're prop pros, the prop pros. Okay, get a therapy ball, place it under the left buttock first, and land on it. If it's kind of on the inside line, I would put it right at glute medius so it's centered, and then I'm just going to move my hips. I'm actually really trying to wag my tail side to side. If it doesn't feel like it's a good detail on your glute, move it a little bit to the side of that left buttock to the lateral, right? So you might shift your knees a little to the left on the chair with your feet on the chair. And I find a pretty good knot there. And I'm just going to stay and kind of flush it out a little bit with my hip kind of rubbing into the ball, but everyone's different. Some of us will just want to stay with this side to side thing, but it's good to find your personal spots here that might be tight. On the left hip first. Okay. Now when you come up, I want you to actually lift your hips up into bridge pose. I love bridge pose with the chair because you can really get up. You'll really work on the hip flexors. The glutes go way inwards, right? They kind of wrap around each other. It's a glute wrap. Okay. So when the hips lift up, find that power in your legs. Empower the legs. Bring the hands down. Where's that ball? You know where it is. Hold the ball with your hands. Okay. I know you want to see if you can toss it up towards the ceiling now, huh? See if it'll make it between. Just kidding. Never tried that. Let's see if I could. Okay. Now lower down onto the right glute with the ball there. So the ball goes to the right buttock. Remember, you got to kind of figure out, okay, I'm on the ball. I'm pushing into it. Push. And massaging. I think we probably can't push enough on this one, right? So do feel when you move your knees, swivel into the right, that you're really focusing on your circulation here. That's going to affect your hips. Okay, your hands can rest because we seem to think your hands do a lot for this one, but probably somewhat useless. Yeah, whenever you can let them be useless, go for it. Just let the body kind of ride it out. And if the knees shift to the right side, and this side different, even though this is usually my side that's got more tightness, but it's probably different with your feet up higher for this. It has its own moments of, oh, I like it better, I don't. But when the feet are higher, you're going to be able to kind of plunge different into the glutes, so it might feel like they're not as tight. You might feel like parts of them are tighter. We'll find out, won't we? Okay. Now, I want you to shift so that you'll move the ball aside and take a block. You could use one or two. You could do 2 blocks side by side, place them to the sides of the hips and then bring them together to land on them. You might use 1 block with the hips up and place it at the base of the spine at the sacrum, right? And for me, I generally feel like it's tailbone, just above the tailbone for this height, because this is pretty high. And then the legs go up. Now, this is a very high bridge, right? It's more of a shoulder stand. When my arms stretch down, palms open towards the chair. I can't touch the legs of the chair, but that would sure be neat if I could do that for this pose. But shoulders back. Now, this is likely too high for some of us, but you've warmed up into getting the abdominals in this inversion, which I'm so excited about with my core. This feels good. I like to do this one. Circulation back to the endocrine glands. This is definitely a little bit of a higher base pose, right, for the circulation into that throat. It's a higher level pose of circulation. So legs might get a little confused. Should they go back? But you don't want to fall. So you might have to position them a little bit forward towards the wall. Some of us can move them a little bit higher up. Don't hurt your tailbone. So if it feels like it's kind of poking your tail and it hurts, then I would just take the block so that they're at the second setting and then slide them together, not too high up because you don't want to hurt your back, but at the very base of the spine. You can tell when they're not right by each other. And then you could either have the legs rest on a chair, this is good, or the legs up, you choose. And it's okay to play with it. And this might be one where you go, okay, I've had the high shoulder stand, now I'm coming down to 2 blocks. Yeah, I recommend you do something where the hip flexors can lengthen. So if you've got the 1 block thing going here, the 1 block horizontal underneath. However, this is often taught the block is not horizontal. which I find really difficult for my tailbone, but it's taught like that. So I like to have the most elementary version. Okay. Now try with the hip flexor reach. So both legs reach on the chair and open up the chest a little bit. Let this be the chest opens, the shoulders back, not too much blanket, if any, right? And use the circulation of opening up the chest, moving through your gills, like you've got gills here. That's going to be what helps our lower back from feeling stressed, is getting this front body to open. As I'll remind myself that if I'm forward hunching too much, okay. All right, now walk the feet back to the edge of the chair. Push down into your feet, lift up the hips, and slide the block out. And we're going to roll to the side, unless you want to do a boat pose. So you might roll to the side to come up to sitting. If you want to do more boat, you could use the hands at the back of the thighs. But when you roll up, I want you to bring the hands back and bring your elbows down to the ground so that you can lift the legs. And I like to actually use the chair under my calves and just stay with this version and roll my shoulders back as well as I can, instead of tightening my hip flexors more and more and more. So I'm trying to push my legs into the chair and open up the chest. And here's my challenge. My head tilts forward too much, so I've got to lean back. And remember, classic fish pose was like this, but the legs are on the ground. Okay, so elbows back, arms really work a lot here just to hold you out. Breathe. When your neck gets involved, get out, okay? And then bend your knees, scoop them in, and roll to your side. And come on up, and let's take a seat. Okay, now we're up. We're in the first quarter here. Okay, take a sandbag. I think a ball would be lovely for this one, so I'm going to try that. And I feel okay sitting without a blanket right now. I think that's going to be okay. But let's say you feel like your back is rounding in this little brief seated pose pattern. You could fold your blanket up to a quarter fold, and I would just put it back to that so that you're just sitting on that kind of long blanket, and then the leg stretches to the wall. Okay? I don't know. We don't have a cat to look at. Let me move this out of the way. Okay. There's other things to do for the cat probably right now. Okay. All right. Okay. So right foot touches the wall. Okay. Blanket or no blanket. Okay. Hopefully that's making some sense. It's been so long though. Some of the stuff has to come back into our consciousness. Okay. Ball under left knee. Sand on left thigh. Okay. Now, ball is optional. So if you put your leg on the ground, it feels like a better stretch for your thigh and your hip. Just go without it. But I'm just an observer of my knee, so I'm almost kind of just wanting to protect it. And it feels like a little more cushion, but I can see a little bit of the ball doesn't work out. Okay. So reach to the chair to seat. So you're going to put your right arm on the chair seat. Those of us with really long arms can probably tip the chair and hold the back of it pretty well. So it's a nice stretch in the side. Yeah, I like to have my arm here because that's a lot of strain for me. Can't seem to get a longer arm here. But as I lean, I put my head into my hand. Again, those of you that hold the chair, you can be here. But see, it's a little tricky for your head. You've got to trust, not overreach the arm. You don't have to put your arm to your head or your head to your arm if you're holding the chair. Left arm stretches up to the side, or it stretches out and back and to the back. You choose. So give yourself a little bit of research here, time for the sensation of how the arms are offering support for your centerpiece of the body to gently elongate. And it elongates with curving, right? That's how our spine care works, is it elongates with curving, the natural curve. Contours are good. So whether the arm is up, yeah, I'm happy just putting my elbow on the chair and my hand back behind and just kind of steady the inhale and relaxing on the out breath. So the right foot might be turning in. So yeah, I guess it could turn out for some. So make sure the right foot is pushing a little bit into the wall. Like you're almost trying to stretch your inner thigh. Okay, now when you come up, if you're holding the chair, let go, kerplunk. And then I want you to start to slide the arm so that your hand is still on the chair, maybe most of your lower arm bone. And you're beginning to turn like you're kind of surveying your room probably now. Survey what's around you. So turn the ribs to the left, bring the left hand back either to, I'm just going to find something to touch like the block, that works good for me. And then of course my arm's going to reach to the left leg at some point, but I get a lot out of getting my waist to turn, the ribs, right? We can never do enough of this kind of work, just embodying that inner lift. So if your hand touches the left knee and you turn, if your neck is getting a little bit upset here, you might turn your head towards the wall and back to the left. You might tilt your ear to the shoulder. Kind of explore so the brain doesn't feel too tight, right? I don't want you to go extreme and then feel like there's this extremity, right? The limbic brain feels a little tight. So feel how you can turn. Take a few moments here. The right hand touches that left leg. If you like, if you don't want to hold the knee, bring the hand back to the chair and keep that turn. Take another breath in. And then as we unwind, we go to the chair. Okay, so I want you to take the ball out for the moment. And then we're going to turn. Now, if you've got the blanket under your hips, just turn so that you'll put the blanket, if you're using that on the other side, you'll put it to the left side of your mat for that side. But for now, cross the right ankle in front of the left knee, place the sand on the right thigh. I'm going to put a ball under my right knee just to protect it. And then come forward, try to reach to the back, right, of the chair, the arms of the chair. And then take that forward fold. Now, if this is too deep, you sit on the blanket or a bolster, actually. So if you're leaning forward and your knees are all the way up at your ears, happens, you would sit on more height. So it would tip the pelvis. So you can actually naturally arch through the spine. These bodies, huh? Okay, now if I work on too much spine kind of manipulation here, I end up overwhelmed in my back. So just basically just be simple. Just cross-legged, lean forward. Breathing into the back space. Don't wait till the pose is over to breathe. Okay, now chest towards the wall, not the screen, right? See if you can reach your chest towards the wall. Okay, the chair is so good, right? You get this kind of reinforced, supposedly a balanced object, right? Because you're not that way. So when you slide back, you're going to shift to that second side. So we're going to turn to the right, and you can sit on a blanket or not. You choose. You might try the second side with or without, but you're really using the chair a lot. So if you have a blanket under your seat, it's going to bring you higher up, so it'll be easier to lean into the chair too. So I've got the ball under my right knee. I've got my sand on the right thigh still. And then I'm going to lift up with the left armpit area. All right, you're trying to get that reach, and then the left elbow down. And as it moves down now, I feel like if I try to effort closer to the wall, I'm gonna go too fast, so my way. So I'm just gonna let it kind of etch out slowly in this low back. Okay, I like to lean my head into my hands. Some of you, it's really easy to get the back bar of the chair, so that works out. And assuming you're using a yoga chair, right? So it's backless chair. If you didn't have a backless chair, you couldn't really do that. You'd have something in the way, right? So they're nice to have. They kind of just show you the outline of a chair anyway. It's just the basics of a chair when you use a yoga chair. Yeah, this is interesting. My second side, I could get the reach of the chair and still get a decent pose, but one side a little shorter than the other in the torso, because when I lift that up, it's harder for me to stretch my right range. And for some of us, our dominant leg, that side's going to be a little bit more pinched up. It's really interesting. So do a practice, help yourself out. You can rub into that right side of the back to warm up the QL here in the right side of the spine, back down towards the hip. Kind of give that a little bit of heat. And it leads up to really huge muscles that are in our back. Right? These are big swaths of tissue. So when I lean in, okay, I could go with my arm up and over, but it's this area that I'm really interested in working. Quality, right? Quality pose. Okay, now come on up. The right hand is back on the ground or the block, and the left hand goes to the right knee, maybe. Not everybody will. Some of us will keep our hand on the chair and work with the poise, right? So the ribs up, turning the torso to the right. Oof. Yeah, see, if I go hand to knee, then as I turn, I'm already kind of sinking a little bit in my torso. So lifting. No, I'm gonna have to use this chair more often. Okay, so if your left leg is hyperextending, you can always be cautious here. Put a blanket under it, a towel, right? Or you can do a little kind of nano bend. It could just be really slight, or push into the foot. And you can peek under and see if your foot is straight up, or if you think it is, but it's turning. Okay, now rotate. Let's keep the turning to the right. Okay, hand anywhere it supports you. Okay, now keep that rotation, and this time when you turn back towards the chair, we'll take that simple cross-legged, last seated pose for quite a while. So I want you to feel when you cross the left ankle in front of the right knee. If you need a blanket, sit on top of the blanket. I'll show how to do that so you'll know. But you can have the ball under either knee. Okay, so typically my ball would be under the leg that I'm focusing on, right? But it depends, right, on your restrictions. So if you find that this is the knee that you might have a challenge with, that's the leg behind the leg you're stretching, then you're going to want to have the ball under that knee, or a block if you don't have a ball or a blanket. So place the sand left behind the center of the blanket. It feels just more cushiony. Okay, hands on the chair. Find that lift of the arch of the spine. Breathing. And then reach forward with the hands moving onto the chair seat. So when I flex my feet, I can feel that action through the left hip. I have to admit, it's really primarily hip. My back feels like it's trying to find balance. This is kind of your last one before you come up to standing to really kind of feel, where's my symmetry in my hips? And maybe when you're leaning forward, you don't try to put your head on the chair. It's taught like that, right? It's taught leaning forward, but we're doing bone therapy, so we want to position so there's resistance in my legs here. Okay, now as I come out, I'm going to slide my hands back on the chair seat, And then move the ball off to the side yard. The sand goes away for now. And I want you just to turn so that you're going to be hands and knees. And I think a blanket would be lovely for this one. So have a blanket under your knees, even though you might not be pushing on it a lot. If you don't like the blanket, they're pretty easy to move, aren't they? Okay, so first things, we'll have the hands and we'll put a block on each side of the mat. I'll put mine both over there so it's not blocking your view. But I want you to have your position of your hips to push back and your seat touch the chair. So you kind of know when you're not in table. And then as you guide yourself forward into the stretch of the palms, if your wrists are a little bothered, turn the hands a little bit out. Okay, just turn them a little bit out so that webbing faces towards the back of your mat. Okay. I like to use my feet to kind of push into the chair, the legs of the chair, so I know the resistance. I don't mind that for a few moments. I like to feel that. And then relax the tops of the feet or toes under. And round the back into cat, chin to chest, spine stretching. Inhale, arch the spine, chest forward. Exhale, round the back. We're now feeling the balance of when you round your back, that when you move the tailbone under and that reach of the chest towards the lower body. You might not look exactly like a cat looks when they go into this because they really lift up their back. Ooh. Quite high and pretty fast too. So you're mimicking the cat, okay? Because you're a human mimicking cat. So when you lift up, and your paws are a little different, to be honest, right? No nails. Well, not like they do. How they push down. So when you round, I want you to feel this when you come into your lunge here. So let's first things first. Let's take the hands farther forward, reach them out, and then lean into your hips. So stretch your hips forward and down, up dog. Okay, stay with that for a few moments. Your legs might push into the legs of the chair so that you have evenness in the hips. I love this one. So I kind of push out into the legs of the chair. You can always come down on your forearms if you're feeling a little tired in the wrist. Lower down your elbows. It's just harder to get up when you're on your elbows. Okay, feel that length in the hip flexors. And now when you come back, happy spine, right? So I'm going to take a block under each hand. And I'm going to take a step forward. Well, let's go with the, let's go left leg first. So we're going to step left leg forward, left foot forward, left leg forward. Feel the bend into the leg. Okay. All right. Now, when you reach through that back foot, toes under, and I want you to feel that lift of the back leg, press into the heel. Okay, so that you can monitor the movement here into the hips. We're going to do the basic hip opener 101. We all know is wide stance. So we're going to turn the back foot down, heel down, walk our blocks to the right, and we'll turn both feet in. So we hope about the same plane. I hope they're in the same line here. Okay, feet turn in, and my hips start with their opening work here, the standing opening work. So I like to take the blocks really far forward and sometimes lower them all the way down. But this is good. This is a little easier on my shoulder maybe. So when I stretch the chest, I let my head lower between the arms, or it's a little bit above my arms. And I want to feel that I can lengthen clearly all limbs here, right? So this is a realistic limb lengthening process. It's not, if I had my arms like up in the air and I'm not going to feel like I can plunge into the connective tissue very well, right? I'm gripping. So I'm still feeling grip. So when I stretch the hands forward, my head between the arms, let the hips stretch back, breathe. It only helps. Let your head maybe nod if you're between the arms and lower. Okay, bend the knees, take a wide stance, knees bending. We're gonna do that one more time in a moment. So come back to the left foot, and I want you to step the right foot next to it, and take a moment when the feet are a little closer in the hips distance. The blocks are way forward. Even if you're really flexible, just let the blocks support your hands and feel the natural movement of the hips back. Breathe. Okay, shift your weight forward to the balls of the feet, and then land back onto the heels, and take that forward fold again with the lunge. So left foot steps back, okay? Left foot back, we're gonna stay with the lunge, so back knee is up off of the blanket, because we're already up, we might as well stay up, otherwise we have to get back up. So when we're lunging, just feel the manner of which the hip is centering behind you, or it's trying to, the right thigh bone into the hip bone, into that strong lunge. Great. Okay. So feeling when you have that reach through that back heel. Okay, press in towards the heel. Stretch through the back leg. Lower the back knee down. Okay. So feel when that left thigh is extending, the top of the back thigh is reaching. Some of us don't like to have the knee down, I don't think, on this one. So if you need to have the knee up, okay, that's fine. But work your way so the front of the back thigh is lengthening. The hip flexor is stretching. Okay. Okay, now hands walk the blocks back, and I want you to hook the toes under left foot, push back through the heel, and this time we'll go back to that wide stance. So you're going to stretch that right foot back, turn to the right, so you have the wide stance, but maybe you can do this one without the block. So try this one when you hold on to the sides of the lower legs. Watch out for the chair bonking your right arm. And feel the feet pivot in, so turn the feet in, okay? Hold on to the lower of the legs and elbows wide and head down towards the ground. Yeah, some people find this one really tricky for blood pressure, but it's a good one. If you're working on that, of course, we all want to find a way to balance our circulation back to the heart and the brain. So the elbows wide. Now, if it's stiff here for you, of course, you can have your hands on your blocks or your hands on your hips. But take a few moments where the spine is elongating down. Breathing. Elbows wide. Okay. Now with that feeling of the hips reaching back, you're going to bring the hands up to the hips, and then hands on the chair and pivot the right foot. So the foot points towards the wall, and take this upright stance. I really like using the chair for these. So our bending right knee towards the chair seat, and the left calf. Woo, give it a good stretch through the back leg. Press through the ball of the foot to the heel and try to stabilize the muscles here. I mean, there's a lot of muscles to talk about here, but feel where the mind is kind of focusing. Is it on balance? Maybe not as much because you got your chair for yourself here, right? I mean, you could always strive a little different here. You could put like one hand to the wall, working a little bit more on the strength into the right hip, the other hand at the wall. Right, there might be something to do with, don't do this next move, okay? I just want to shut this because it is cool. It's getting too cold. Okay, so if my hip is having tightness, soreness, that kind of thing, one other thing that we want to work on is stability and strength, right? Right into it. So if I have my knee bending, my hands back, either up at the wall or down at the chair, they both feel pretty good. It's kind of hip quenching. You feel that. So let's stretch the right leg. So you're going to lengthen the right thigh, and the back foot, kind of funny, it might try to turn out a bit. So I want you to keep both feet supported parallel, two different tracks here. And we're going to turn to the right and reach the right arm just that direction, maybe not up to the ceiling, but you're going to try to let the waist rotate. Oh, this is interesting, right? Revolve triangle. So keep that chest moving, right? So open up the chest so you have that pivot through the waist. Okay, let the torso turn. And if you feel like you can put your arm behind you at your back, go for it. Feel the waist trying to turn just the right amount, so the natural curve through your spinal column. Okay. Press down into your right foot. The leg might be trying to bend a little bit more. So try to push into your right foot and then come back with the torso, hands on the chair. Step the right foot back and then lean forward. Watch out for the wall. Don't bonk your head at the wall. Up dog and stretch through the waist. Okay. All right, so far so good. You know, I like to do this with the center stretch. If I've got my blanket there, it's nice. To bring my knees down to the blanket and stretch out like you would do in a camel pose. This is nice, although sometimes it's not knee nice for everybody. And then you've got to work here, right? And it's a little more on the wrist. So you choose. But when you push back into downward dog, you're going to have your hands on the chair and you're going to stretch out through the spine. I feel more than the spine, though. I feel the connective tissue, right? The tissues and the muscles reaching. Maybe let your hips move a little bit side to side, wag your tail. And feeling when the armpits are stretching. This is such a good way to do dog pose because the weight element here in the hands is slightly different. So you can really work on that circulation through the lymph in the armpits. Okay. Now do a little bit less deep pressure. See if you can just gently start to loosen up on the back. Feeling the back slightly round. And then walk the feet closer together and take a step forward. Now you might decide when you step the left foot under the chair that the back leg doesn't have to move farther behind you. You might find the most basic version is better for you. But reach through the right heel. Right, if it's not as stretchy on the side, you can make changes, but I recommend try to keep it about the same stance. So again, you're in two different tracks. Okay. Okay, lunge, so the left knee bends. Okay, now that missing calf stretch has now come upon you. Okay. Hands could go to the wall. If I tend to kind of push the wall with the heel of my hand, I might kind of cup the hand. They used to call this kind of spider the hand for yoga poses. And feel that lunge. It's likely a different blend of sensation in the second hip. Could be a little bit different. Maybe more calf. Yeah, if you notice there's a really big difference, this might be one you focus on and just give yourself, maybe 5 minutes, a few times a week that you just do this lunge pattern. And that's it, right? And try to feel, okay, right side, left side, and then try to get some balance. Doing one side maybe longer so you can balance out your whole leg unit up into your hip. Okay, now we go into it. So if this is too much on the wrist, you can always lower your elbows down for the whole little next part. So this is good. It's just more work for my hip if I have my elbows on the chair. Okay, if the elbows down is too much of a stretch that you don't want to be on your wrist, you can always put a bolster on the chair just across and put your elbows on that. I'll show that in a moment so you know. So right hand is down and we're going to turn to the left, lift the left arm up and rotate. Okay, now we want this to be all levels. So for some of us, this is just too much, right, with the wrist and the pressure. So if you will use a bolster on the seat, you can always just give it a try. You won't have your palm down. It would be elbows, elbows, legs straight, both feet parallel. Then I would bring my right elbow to the center of the bolster because I don't want my bolster to flip off of my chair. That would be not so good for my whole body. And then I turn. This is just a little more work, but there's no wrist issues now. I don't have to deal with that pressure. So some of you might prefer that. Hand can go behind you. Ooh, if the leg is trying to bend or it's shaky, see if you can press into the foot, take a break, bend the knee a little bit, try again, straighten the leg. Breathing helps. Okay, stay with the awareness. If you need to shift your torso back to the chair, belly button down, that's okay, but try to work with that twist. Yeah, it's a nice emphasis with breathing through the nose. I know that's a bit much, huh, to keep that focus, but turn back to the chair. And now put your elbows down the chair for those of us that don't have the bolster. It's going to be so tough, I think, but do the work you can or add your bolster, one or the other. It's a lot to do just to add a bolster for this maybe, but I get it. Okay, so now when I shift out here, I'm going to try to move my bolster away. See if I can get that easy. And then I want you to step back to a balance. So move the right foot a little closer to, watch out for the wall. Anyone who's taller than me is going to hit the wall here. Walk the right foot back in so it's closer towards it's a very small lunge, and then swing the left leg back and up. Okay, this one you can very comfortably do with your elbows on the chair. I bet you this would be good for some of us. So we can try to coordinate. It's like you're trying to steer your hips here. Hip planing, we'll call this one, hip planing. Okay, so the left leg is up and I'm trying to balance out my hips. So I'm not focusing on pivoting my left hip out like a half moon. It's more warrior 3, right? So hands could be on the chair. Caution on the right knee, a little micro bend. Okay, if the blanket's bothering you, you can just move it aside. Okay, now shift so left foot is down and right leg reaches back. Pivot through the hip. Remember, you could certainly do this one with your elbows on the chair. You can always give it a try. If it feels too much demand on your hip joint, then come back up. But it's going to kind of put a little bit more resistance in your hips. Feel where that leg is lifting. Take a deep breath in and out. Try to breathe through the nose when you can. It's most easily on the in-breath, I'm sure, but in general, just noticing how interesting that is for your breathing muscles. Okay, step the right foot down, and now just let your feet step out wide and let your hips go side to side, wag your tail. Okay, now we're going to take a seat. So I want you to turn so that you're sitting on the chair. Watch out for too many props. Okay, we'll use them real soon. But I want you to have your feet so they're only at a width that you can use your ball between the knees. So take your ball, have it center of your knees, and squish it. Smush it, squeeze the ball. Take a few moments here, get everything organized. But you're gonna squeeze the ball with the legs. I think it's legs more than knees, isn't it here? Center of my knees, right? I don't want to have it too high up on the inner thigh because that doesn't involve my adductors like I would like it to. Okay, hands back on the seat of the chair. Okay, keep squeezing. So squeeze might be alternate, squeeze, release. I'm going to try to just keep a moderate squeeze. So it's like maybe 70% of my total maximum. So I kind of refresh the circulation in my adductors and lift up a little bit with the chest. See what happens when you kind of peel away at the circulation around the heart. Great. Your shoulders are perhaps trying to roll back and down. Breathing. Okay, relax the squeeze. Keep the ball between the knees and emphasize that the knees are going to stay in their same angle here. I don't want you to twist and contort the knee. So I try to keep a balance of how much I squeeze into the ball so one of my knees doesn't slide back. That's one thing, even just a little squeeze. And then bring the left hand to the side of the right leg, maybe knee, but maybe leg a little higher. And then when you turn, I want you to push a little bit with the left hand on the side of that right leg. And you could reach the back of the chair. I'm good with holding the seat of the chair. I kind of like that better because I can try to move my fingers a little closer to the center, but I can't get that far back with my rib movement quite yet. So I'm just working with basic, essential. You peek at your knees, right? If one's shifting back, you're gonna have to moderate that. You gotta be a knee moderator here. Moderate the knees. All things in moderation. Okay, now come back center, lean forward, because it feels good to shift a little forward, and no squeezing of the ball here. Inhale up, and exhale, twist. Left hand reaches back. I actually find this seems a little more natural to reach the chair back for me. It's interesting. I know where that is. So right hand to the side of the left leg. Again, it might be the second side. You might go, I touch the knees here. These other things, these parts of the torso that have different range. So it could be different, history in your body, right? Internally, scar tissue, all those things could affect my range of motion. It could be. So when I turn, I try to find the weight on my sitting bones balanced, kind of rocking a little bit right to left. And then I lift up at the heart and feeling when the spine is gently lengthening with my breath in through the nose. And as I exhale, you can feel that twist. You might feel stuck in the twist, like you're holding the strength here for your inner environment, right? So you're trying to stabilize and have an open environment for the organs. So there's obviously less prolapse, right? So I have that inner lift, because the reality is most of us are in this position most of the day, are forward. We're just not upside down all day. So we've got to find a way to work with our breathing skills, our movement of breath, to bring that supply of circulation. Okay, now when you come back forward, you choose how you're going to forward fold it. So we've done a good amount of forward fold. So I want you to take it so that you can have your feet in a wide stance on the mat and go forward. Hands can reach back to the legs of the chair. This might be a little extreme for some. So if that's too much, you can bring your blocks in front of you, just inside your big toe, and hands on the block and forward fold. Yeah, this might work better for some. Now, if you're in this deeper motion, here's the challenge, right? Your spine is going to feel like it has a little bit of peer pressure, right, for rounding. So we want to go all ranges of our back, anywho. But when I lean forward, I try to have my legs push into my arms so I can strengthen my hips. So squeeze my arms with my legs. Okay, and my head releases downwards. Breathing. Okay, if that doesn't work, your hands could be on blocks or onto the feet, right? Onto the ankles. Or the elbows on the knees. Okay. Let's get a little bit of restoring bone therapy. So when we come up, hopefully we're doing that, but we're going to shift. I want you to tap out your feet. I like to do this. We're just tapping, kind of marching, tapping on the legs, all the way to the knees, and then back up towards the hip and to the side. You can do more of like a hand slap, or you can make it into a fist. The fist can feel kind of nice. Okay. All right, now let's take a shift here with our chair. So we're going to step a foot back, and then you're going to lean forward to stand up. And we're going to take our chair to the other side of our mat, and it really does need to be on the other side and a little bit off of your mat, okay? So we're going to move it down. So take a moment to get down, whether you need your chair to help you down, and grab your second blanket, and let's stack them up. So we got 2 blankets near the chair, not too close. I don't want you to hit your head here. So that's why you don't want the chair too close in. You got sand. You got a ball. You got a bolster. You're gonna use it. You get back to the bolster towards the end. Okay. So I've got my bolster and it's center of my mat, and I think it's pretty much in the middle. Okay, I got my 2 blankets just with a little space between, as big as my arm is. So maybe I'm overthinking the size of my arm there. Okay. All right. Now, if your foot touches the wall, it's fine. But not all of us want a barrier that might cause pressure on our knee, because that resistance could push into our knee. So that's not like we want our knee to feel. I don't think your knee wants to feel like it's being pushed into personally. So don't get so close your knee's pushing the wall. But your foot could touch the wall, and your ball could be under the inner right knee or thigh. And then we're going to take side sage. So we're going to lower down and take our sand across the hip or on the torso, on the side. And then reach over to the chair. Oh, at last. Okay. Scoot around your supports here. So that means all the things that we're using. So I'm using a little of everything here. I've got my awareness in my neck to try to get my head to rest into the blankets. So that's the work for me, is to get my brain to rest down. I got to touch the button and it says brain down. Okay, so the arm is reaching and the waist is lengthening. And feeling that basic nourishing breath. Feel where that right arm can find rest. So maybe the chair needs to be closer to you. You know, maybe that you can play a bit with that. Just be careful, they're not that easy to move around when you're in this awkward position. Okay. Now trusting the balance from your left hip in the left side of the torso. And feel how the breath helps you kind of inside. There's a little bit of inner float with it, right? There's a little bit of inner movement that flows up and down. And again, if your head tries to lift a little bit, let it go. The efforting necks that we have, right? Looking, trying to lift, tighten. Okay, now when we shift sides, I want you to go very clearly at your own curiosity here. So I try to roll on my back to get to the next side. It's easier to roll to my front, I think, like hands and knees, but I don't want to hit my chair. So I try to let that sand roll and then bring my knees to each other and then bring my elbows down, back behind me, and maybe have the moment when you're centered, kind of feeling the shoulders, the chest open, and then walk your feet over to the left side and scoot your hip under. And these all seem like natural movements, but I know if you didn't do enough tummy time when you were little, you probably aren't really clear about how you get yourself up and down and move your hip joints. So these are good things. I think that you're getting back to tummy time. Okay, so right arm between. Okay, left arm reaches to the chair, and sand is likely needs to go to the side first before the arm goes overhead. So second side, when you keep that reach and focus, yeah, let your head lower. Now, if you roll a little bit on the back of your head, the truth is you might feel like you can rest your brain easier So just noticing if I push down to the right with my head, like you're sleeping, maybe that doesn't work so well in this pose. Okay, but as the arm is onto the chair, reaching, resting your eyes. It's okay to feel like you're in a bit of a stretch and resting, right? So there might be some energy flowing through you, right, the whole time. Meaning you don't need to be sleeping. But as you energize that arm reach, whether it's slight or if you're kind of sliding it farther back or moving the chair closer to you, you let the weight of your arm rest. This is a nice little flush for the armpit area, a little upside down. Okay, now we'll stay with this left side focus. I love how this is going to complete itself. So we have this left side, kind of sort of a lengthener. We're completists now. We're going to go towards it. So roll right, sand, ribs. Okay, now stay with that right side and just push your bolster to the side of your mat towards the wall. Turn so that you're going to lower back down. Okay, head on one blanket. Got too many, put it away. Now put it back there. And then you'll bring the right leg down to bend, and it's got to bend a lot actually to get your left hip to cross over, and place the sand on your outer left hip. Okay, you might find that if it's too close on the bone, the hip bone, maybe less hip stretch for you. So it's okay. If you're feeling kind of sore there, maybe that's better to have more of the weight bearing onto it. Maybe not. You've got to figure out for your own solo adventure here where you're going to put that swath of sand on you. Swathing. Okay, left arm open, chest wide, head turns left. Okay, feeling when you push a little bit, I like to kind of grip my sandbag and pull it over to the right and then let it rest. So I like to get it close. For me, it feels better closer to my knee. I've got just the right wrap around the leg. It's perfect. And then the ball again is at the sacrum area, maybe a little lower for you. Maybe it tucks a little bit under your back, okay? If your shoulders are really tight and you're finding that the chest is tight, doesn't open up, you could also put the ball under your left arm and try to open up the chest with that so it's not as much discomfort. You know, even if you know that's an area for you, but it comes down, but you want to massage a little bit, you could put the ball under your left upper arm into the rotator cuff and just kind of move a little bit up and down. I like doing that myself because I can work with just nice circulation into these areas that need blood flow. So you can have it simple with the ball at the sacrum or work a little bit with the arm. Shrugging the shoulder, rolling it back. Letting your eyes rest. Relax the grip of the buttocks, even if they are fully stretching, one side pressing, one side reaching. We tend to clench a little bit here and there. Okay, now if I turn back center with my torso, right, it's twisting. So I'm going to take a mini moment in center, slide the sand to my belly so I can center my knees to point up, shift my pelvis back, and then put my bolster on the left side. There might be some of us that don't want to use the bolster at all for this, and we're comfortable just crossing the leg over, knees to the side. I just want to have a complete balance in my, as much as I can feel in my pelvis. So yeah, feeling is, I guess it's often a secondary experience for some of us maybe. So it's just kind of putting the time aside for this inner sensation. So ball maybe to the sacrum area. Maybe you reach it up to that upper right side of your back and flow the arm open. Now you can kind of play with that. Okay, and your head could be center, it could roll to the right. Yeah, that's a little awkward when the ball is underneath me with my head moving, I have to admit. But I like to jostle those tissues. I know that when you work with the ball in the hip area and the glutes, it's almost like we're used to kind of rubbing those muscles a bit more, but because we sit and rely on our back and so forth. But this upper area, since it's closer towards the sky anyway, it can get kind of an interesting, dryness to it, right? So try to juice it up a little bit here with either the arm just open or the ball under it. If you've never done that, it's going to feel kind of awkward. Something stuck in your under your arm. Stick in your arm. Okay, a few more cycles of breath before our last pose. We're just about there. Okay. Enjoy that current of breath in through the nose. Belly moves. It feels like there's expansion in ribs and belly. And it kind of completes its movement ritual back to the heart. Diaphragm moves back up to the heart. And it goes back down again. Okay, now as we shift the sand, any ball, you might have to move it purposely down to the side. You're going to move the sand closer to the wall if you're using that. And then just roll left, cannonball shape, slide the blanket. If you don't feel comfortable with your legs up the wall, you can definitely put your legs up the chair like we started without the bolster under your hips or bolster under your hips. So the chair is nice to put your legs up on too. But we're doing both today. We're doing legs up the chair, legs up the wall. Okay, so if you're going to do a chair shoulder stand, that's another option. It's been eons since you did that. You might want to do a little review. Maybe I'll do a little mini video on that one. But the sand is going to go on the feet for this. So we slide the sand across and bend the knees, scoop up the sand, and push the feet up. Find that there's a pretty good balance with your sand bag. And some people like to have their feet really close and the sand to slide around the sides. I guess for me, that feels funny on my knees. I like to do this for my knee health because of that circulation, any kind of retention of it, inflammation on the knee. This drains it out. So I like a little space, but I suppose you could try either one. Eye pillow on or blanket here or nothing. And with the arms lower below the heart. And take your time to get into this reverse action, internalizing the movement of the breath. Your legs up the wall might feel different after a bones practice. It might feel just a sense of vitality inside the body. Of kind of being absorbed right now. So the weight on the feet is really good for this circulation into our bones. Right, intensifying that flow of lymph, draining it out through the leg pits. Slow down the in-breath so that the abdominals, you can control that movement. Maybe in the lower part of the abdominals that is kind of dormant. And for some of us, if there's scar tissue down into that basin, it can be almost like it just doesn't move or it hasn't been able to. It's kind of stuck together. So I think it's an especially interesting area to move when you're upside down with the pelvis kind of in this hip flexor hinge. Now you can also try doing that with the feet a little bit away from the wall with the legs still straight up, of course, sand. You might feel like, wow, I can now feel that lower abdominal area have a little gripping, and so I can actually feel it. It's kind of funny, when my feet are at the wall, it's not the same as when I heighten the energy in the lower abdominals with the feet away. As we feel the leg position, either away or to the wall, give the spine a basic imprint into what it's touching, the bolster, the floor. The cervical spine is maybe on a blanket. But in your inside, right, you're just feeling that as a support to keep it open. So let's start to gently bend the knees, and gently means I kind of brush my feet at the wall, the heels. And then I try to feel the tailbone press, and then I shift my feet away, bending the knees so much that when I bend them now, yep, you can reach to the sand or you can toss it overhead. You just gotta be careful with it because it might end up on the chair. And then you don't want the chair to end up on you. Precaution. Okay, knees into chest, hands clutch the back of the legs. Get that full stretch for spine all the way around and up into the neck and the throat. Replenish here. Now rolling either side. You probably go to one side most of the time. So get a rolling and let the hands touch. And pushing yourself, take a moment seated against the wall with the bolster under your rear. Feel that natural elevation of the pelvi, your head centers back, and bring your hands to rest at your lap, palms open. And feel that lowering of the belly, right? Last few moments it was tipped the other way, so bring it back to that balance, softening. And then bring the hands up in front of your heart center. You can let the hands gently press. And you can also bring the hands just to clutch around each other like you're holding them, like a little bit of a hand hug. That can be nice too. But let that inhalation bristle in through the nose. And then as you exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. Gratitude